How naive to believe there might be a single answer to every question. Altair ibn La'ahad's Codex. Hello, I'm Andrew, and I want to welcome you to Visions of the Past, the podcast all about the lore of Assassin's Creed. This is episode 84, and today we're going to talk about how the series should be played, in what order the series is best played in. But we're not going to have this conversation alone today. We are joined by someone who's probably going to confuse you a little bit, for the simple fact that he is also named Andrew. So there are really two schools of thought when we talk about what order to play the series in. There is release order, and there is historical chronology, I guess would be the best way of describing it.
Yeah. I look at it this way, it's really in what you want out of it. I mean, if you're looking for the Assassin's Creed storyline, you'd have to start at Assassin's Creed and then work your way through release. If you're more interested in the actual, say, historical timeline, then yeah, you're going to have to go all the way back and play through, because it almost works both ways.
I can see that. It really does come down to how you want to interpret the story. If you don't really care about the modern day, I can see doing a historical playthrough.
Well, I know I used to care about the modern day, but once they killed off Desmond, it just got to a point where it's so a couple games it's you work in an office working for the bad guys, you just don't know it, and now you're an archaeologist who works for the bad guys and then doesn't work for the bad guys. Or you can go, I like playing this because I get to play as a Viking, I get to play as an Egyptian, then I get to play as Altair, then I get to play as Ezio, and then I get to play this.
Well, there's always been the other way you can play it, and that's just based on what you want to be. Do you want to relive the Renaissance, the French Revolution, Victorian London? I've always been a proponent of playing it in release order. Almost every year I'll replay the series in release order. There's a few reasons why I do it that way. I follow along with the modern day, and I like the way that it flows, but at the same point I like seeing the evolution of the series. All the way back with Assassin's Creed 1, it's vastly different from what we just had in Assassin's Creed Valhalla. And I like watching the evolution of the series and watch the lore expand. Say you play the historical timeline. So that means you're starting with Odyssey, going to Origins, and then Valhalla, and then back to Assassin's Creed 1. So if you're taking the latest release in Valhalla and then jumping to the earliest release, there is such a jump there from quality. And I'm not saying either one is better than the other, but Assassin's Creed 1 was made almost 14 years ago. And I'm not talking graphics, I'm talking playstyle. You're spending most of the game sitting back and blocking instead of attacking. Or you're being sneaky more than you're being a gung-ho Vikinger. It's just a very different playstyle. And I think that if you start with one and go through Valhalla, that it gradually changes and leads you into a natural progression of the series.
My main thing with it is I enjoyed the gameplay of the first Assassin's Creed. And then when it came to the Ezio games, they were constantly making changes, constantly trying to update what was already more or less okay, I guess. And that's where it's like the Ezio series is great, the story is great, most of the gameplay is good, but that's where I always found that's where a lot of some of the breaks are, and they broke a few things trying to get things right throughout that 3-game setup. But for you, you play through every single year. For me, it's like I'm kind of stuck at this point. It's like, well, what play style do I want to play?
Right. And
if I start at the first Assassin's Creed and work through, it's like that's the problem I had playing through Ezio's series again. I got halfway through it and was like, I can't do this anymore.
And I'm, to be honest, going through in chronological order to go to Brotherhood and Revelations, I do get tired of Ezio.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that he's a bad character. While he makes some choices that I think are out of character in Revelations, he's not a bad character.
No, I enjoyed Ezio's storyline. It's just they did too much.
At that point, I'm ready to be done. But at the same time is when we jump to the longer games, the Origins, the Odysseys, and the Valhallas. At that point, I'm also ready to be done.
That is the downside if you were to go, say, if you want to do the historical lore aspect of it. You're going to be spending a ton of time playing... Okay, which one's is Origins the earliest, or is it? It's Odyssey.
It's Odyssey, then
so
Origins.
You're going to spend a ton of time playing Odyssey, then a ton of time playing Origins,
then a ton of time into Valhalla.
And we both know I haven't even finished either of them because of the fact that they are, unless you specifically play the main storyline, there's just too much. I love the games. I love open world roleplay, but at the same note, it's just like it's a big open world with not a lot, and except it's all clustered and then it's all repetitive.
Well,
unless you focus on the story.
And you're right. And I kind of did that with Origins and not Origins. Origins I played through all the way through 100% without really stopping. That one I spent 175 hours, I think, in my first playthrough, and for whatever reason, that one grabbed a hold of me, and I stuck with it. But once we got into Odyssey, I didn't finish it at first. I took a 3-month break, I think, before I finished it.
See, that's the conflict I've got, is like Origins. My conflict with Origins was the starting point of the story is you literally start in the middle. There's a whole bunch of stuff that went on before you even started the game, and you're just picking up a character and have no idea what's going on.
Yeah, that game...
That was my struggle with it, but I will say that it is the much more streamlined of the current 3 open world RPGs.
And I think that comes from dialogue choice.
Yeah, that one had a lot more focus, and it wasn't a lot of repetitive side missions. And then came Odyssey, which had a long storyline, but also a ton of side stuff that, in the end, it's almost hard to focus on the main story because it's, if you want to assassinate all these guys, Order the Ancients, you gotta go do this and this and this and this and this, and then you gotta do the campaign as well to unlock these people.
Yep.
And it just... It's a lot like the early games where they're working to try and find what works.
I agree with that. And right now, with Odyssey, the last playthrough spent 55 hours just doing the story in New Game Plus. And the first time I played it, I got to... I don't remember the name of the battle. It wasn't the last battle. It was I want to say it's called the Battle of Pelos, but that might not. I don't remember.
Finished, honestly.
But I got to that point and it said I was underleveled, so I spent the next 150 hours clearing the map to level up to be available. And at that point, that's why I stopped with Odyssey specifically. So, in my opinion, if you're going to be a new player to the series and want to do it historically, starting with that game, you either have to be very dedicated, absolutely in love with open world RPGs, or you're not going to get through it. No.
Well, and that was my problem partly with Odyssey is after it came out, I had my ship fully leveled up. I had other things fully leveled up. And then they patched it and increased the level up capabilities of everything. And all of a sudden, I went from being the most deadly ship on the sea to, oh god, now I got, 100 hours of grinding to do in order to get all this stuff upgraded all the way again.
I remember when that happened. Because you had spent a lot of drachmi, and then I looked at it and went, I need 100,000 for this one thing and 100,000 for that thing. Mm-hmm. Not to mention the what was it? The wood and the ore and the gems.
Yeah. But I mean, they did this. Well, not they, but like CD Projekt Red did the same thing with The Witcher, which actually ended up with a game-ending bug for me because all of a sudden I couldn't level up anymore because they raised the requirements and it glitched my game out. So it's like with Odyssey, that was one thing that hit me as I load up one day after an update, and all of a sudden I'm like, wait a minute, I had my ship maxed out. What? I need 150,000 olive wood? So it's one of those things, it's like, as much as I'm more for, I kind of do like the idea, because if you were to start at Odyssey and then go to Origins and then go to Valhalla and then work your way up historically, it shows how great of a job Ubisoft has done in linking all of the historical stuff and linking all of their storyline together. Because you don't have to know what Abstergo, the modern Abstergo is, and you don't have to know what, the current Assassin's Brotherhood is in order to play through from that starting point and still be able to get the entire history of the Assassins and the Templars.
Yeah, I can see that, because historically the stories mesh where you see the Order of the Ancients, the Cult of Cosmos, the Templar Order, and you can see how they could theoretically go from one order to the other to the next, and how they could all join.
But the downside is the modern world sections of it. That's where you're going to be getting lost, because it's going to be, wait a minute, what's going on with the planet? And then I don't know how things end on Valhalla, because I'm nowhere near done with Valhalla. But you're going to get that, and then it's going to jump back to, oh, now what's going on in the modern?
if you're going to follow that modern day storyline, you're going to end up confused. So even, let's say you start with not Origins. Say you start with Odyssey. That's the middle of the modern day trilogy for that character. Mm-hmm. So you start in and she's an assassin and you go, oh, okay, cool. And then you follow her story along. And then you go to Origins, which was her working for the Templars, and if you don't realize that it came before, you just go, huh? And then you jump into Valhalla and what happens with her there, and then all of a sudden you go into some dude who was kidnapped by Abstergo, and you've maybe heard of Abstergo twice at that point in Layla's. Mm-hmm. So if you're going to follow the modern day story, you're going to be confused. Absolutely truth. Mm-hmm. Because, let's see, the years. We have Odyssey's modern day is set in 2018. Origins is 2017. Valhalla's 2020. And then you jump into Assassin's Creed, which is 2012.
Yep. Yeah. You pretty much, I would say the only way that you could really honestly play it from a historical standpoint is if you've already played the series. Because
I think that is a good recommendation.
I don't think anybody new to Assassin's Creed could just start at Odyssey or Origins and then play the whole series from a historical standpoint, because they would be completely lost. And you'd have to play through the whole series to get the actual history of everything in the first place.
I can see where that recommendation comes from, because in what I'm going to call the RPG trilogy, which is Origins, Odyssey, and Valhalla, you get forced out of the Animus maybe 3 times per game. And then you would jump into the very first game where you get pulled out after almost every single assassination.
Honestly, the first game was the last time I was actually happy about getting out of the Animus, because there was always little things to find and do.
Oh,
Whereas
yeah.
it seems like to me, especially with Odyssey, if I go out, I'm just wandering around an apartment doing nothing.
Yeah, and once you read those emails and everything on the computer once, nothing really updates. And with Assassin's Creed 1, every time you get pulled out is a different day in the story. So there's more things to find.
There's that, and then like even with Black Flag, at least there was stuff you could do as you progress through the game.
Yep.
If you backed out, you could wander more of the building, find more of the sticky notes.
Find more of the sticky notes, find more of the terminals that you could break open.
It feels to me more that as we progress, they're just cutting more of the real world out.
And that, if I remember right, or at least from what I've seen within the community, there are those that don't like it. So the less that they put into it, or the less that they force you into doing, the more that more people get into it. But at that point, you turn the series from what, in my opinion, makes Assassin's Creed into more of historical tourism.
Well, that's just it. They've converted from the novelty of it is, hey, you're going into this machine that's reading your DNA or somebody else's DNA to show you the historical fact, but there's also things going on in the modern day, to now it's, yeah, there's something going on in the modern day, but you're just going in to play an RPG.
The first 5 games, Assassin's Creed 1, 2, Brotherhood, Revelations, and 3. Those 5 games, within the first 5 minutes of the story, you know you are Desmond and you are replaying history for a reason. Starting with...
I've kind of lost track in the new games of what the reason for even playing is at this point. And that's kind of what's... Like, I get, oh, we're just trying to find out information about the Egyptians. We're trying to find this. And,
well,
I've basically, at this point, I've lost track.
Desmond's Pentology was all about Desmond reliving history to find some artifact or to train himself. Or he was in a coma and needed to find a way out of his coma. 4 in Rogue, you were just an analyst reliving these guys' lives to try to make a game or a movie, if I remember right.
Well, being manipulated by the assassins and the
John Standish.
Well,
yeah.
Sage.
Yeah, John Standish. Yeah, so there was all of that there, but then you jump into Unity. And Unity was to...
I don't even remember.
Unity was... You're playing as the initiate, who just basically listens to Bishop. And you are trying to find the sage that Arno had met in his life to try to stop Abstergo from finding that body first. And that was after you got an introduction to Jacques de Molay, and then you get pulled out. So that one was kind of weird for the modern day. Syndicate, you're trying to find a shroud, but it's the same kind of thing as Unity, where you have to go through the prologue and the first 2 sequences before you even get pulled out and realize you're in the modern day.
So
what's going on?
Here's almost a prime example of the way things have changed. The last Assassin's Creed game I've completed was Black Flag.
What?
I have not completed Unity. I have not completed Syndicate. I barely played Rogue, mostly just because I had other things going on with Rogue. It wasn't... And then I have not completed Origins, Odyssey, or Valhalla.
I think we need to have a challenge to Andrew here about finishing a game and then coming back on and hearing his thoughts on him.
But I mean, it speaks to a change in how things were, because I religiously, Assassin's Creed, I knocked all those games out. They came out, I knocked them out.
The only thing you didn't do in the first one was collect the flags, which was an overabundance and a tedious. Yes.
But then, like, Black Flag came out, and as much as I loved it because it was exactly what I was looking for in terms of I always enjoyed pirate games, and this was the first real, like, good 3D, you got your ship, you're sailing, you're doing all this crap. I loved Black Flag, but Black Flag fell into that trap for me in which I don't like tedium. I don't like grinding things. I don't like, if you want to complete the whole game, you have to go to all these itty bitty little islands to collect all these chests. You got to go and do this, and you got to go and do that. For me, it's like, that doesn't create replayability. And then it slowly got worse as time progressed, and then the storylines got worse for me because, like, Unity, I just couldn't get into the storyline. And then there was the money issue in Unity.
The 3 different
where you
currencies.
and I used to have to, like, grind out some of the multiplayer co-op stuff just to get money to be able to afford things. And then Syndicate, the switch
of the twins.
Like, I just couldn't get into it. And then the other ones, as much as I enjoyed Odyssey, as much as I enjoyed Origins, and as much as I enjoyed Valhalla, they fall into the trap of large-scale RPGs. In that, as much as I enjoy them, like, I enjoy The Witcher. But as much as I like big open world maps, if they're not populated with things, or if the things they are populated with are tedious or repetitive, you get bored fast, because I don't like busting through the story in an open world RPG and then going, I missed all this, but then if I go to get all this, I get bored out of my mind.
You feel like you're doing the same thing over and over again, and I had that problem
Red Dead Redemption.
Oh, yes. Yeah. I haven't touched that in a long time. But there's so much to do in Odyssey that felt like it was just the copy and paste same thing over and over and over again. That's why I stopped playing it for 3 months. With Valhalla, to me, it was completely different because everything on the map felt different. The stories felt different. It wasn't until I cleared the map and was doing Redis quests and trying to upgrade my weapons, now the river raids and not so much the mastery challenges because they are a little different, but the river raids and Retta, that all felt the same. And it got to a point to where I stopped playing Valhalla for...
Well, it's that.
3 months? No, not 3 months. It's been 2. It's been
kind of the
same
problem I'm having, though, with these games is combat. It's just, it's so... I don't know. They can't seem to quite get a good medium on it because, like, that was my issue with Odyssey is, you're fighting these other mercenaries and it's just, he's immune to almost everything. So, hey, can I possibly push him off a building? Because otherwise I'm going to spend 20 minutes beating on him until he finally dies.
Yep.
And then they tried to fix that with the new one, and now it's just more like, to kill this guy, I have to use this kind of combination of tricks. And to kill this guy, I got to use this combination of tricks. And it's like...
I don't mind that.
But they still, for me, it's like your gear.
It feels like
Origins. This guy's kicking your butt. You better upgrade your gear and then figure out what you want to do. Like, it was an interesting idea with their skill system. Having the 3 different trees, and then you kind of open them up as you go. But at the same note, I was finding where it's like you and I were roughly the same level, and yet you had better skills or power than me simply because you chose some different pathway, whereas I was literally like just sitting there going, why can't I beat this guy? And we're both the same point in the game. Yep.
And that was one of the things specifically with Odyssey. It took a lot on how you built Cassandra or Alexios, and then if you were to jump into Origins, it wasn't necessarily the same. It would be different. So if you tried the same tactics, it would change. And then into Valhalla, that would change too. And then there's nothing like that in AC1. So if you're a first time player, bringing it back to our conversation topic, you're going to end up very confused, and you're going to see.
I would almost say you have
weird.
to split the series down the center as, do you like stealth combat games, or do you like combat RPGs?
Yeah.
And I would almost say Black Flag is about the point, that time period of the series, because Rogue goes into that too. That's about the transition point I'd say you'd have to make a call on is, you know, do you want to play the RPGs and then play, or do you want to play the stealth?
I can understand that thought process because Unity was really where RPG elements started getting introduced. I found that I have been, well, how do I want to say this?
Stealth got very difficult in Unity.
Well, combat got very difficult in Unity
too.
for me. And then they introduced different weapons and gear that have different qualities. You can hold different types of tools, or you can have so many phantom blades, and it's better for eagle vision or health. And so Syndicate kind of expanded on that. And then Odyssey went, here's all of it. Not Odyssey. Origin said, here we are. So
see, I think we're almost running into a different
topic.
We're falling off the main topic, and we're falling into like something that I would almost say a future podcast would be worth.
And I really think that that's a good point, because in the order in which you're going to play the series really comes down to what you want. And I think if you want us to expand on, well, what we've been talking about the last handful of minutes, please let me know. And really, it comes down to two things. For me, if you are a first-time player, start at AC1. See how the series progress, follow the modern-day story, and go through it gradually. If you want a challenge, at least I think it's a challenge, from a gameplay standpoint, and you already understand at least the modern-day story, you kind of understand it and how it progresses, then start with the history, starting with
Odyssey.
History will go like this. It goes Odyssey, Origins, Valhalla, Assassin's Creed 2, Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, Revelations, Assassin's Creed 4, Black Flag, Assassin's Creed Rogue, Assassin's Creed 3, Assassin's Creed Unity, and then Assassin's Creed Syndicate. And that, if you play them back to back, you're going to have a learning curve based on RPG to action stealth game. Not to mention how the controls change within those action stealth games.
Yeah.
So it's a challenge. It's probably a challenge that, actually, it is a challenge that I've never done myself. And I will probably wait to try that until Valhalla gets New Game Plus, if that's a thing. Because then I don't have to worry about leveling up. So we'll kind of see if I take that as my next playthrough order. But that is something I've never done. I've always played.
I can almost
release.
Honestly say I would never accomplish it.
Well, if you could...
I recently tried, because remember I tried playing Origins, couldn't finish it. So then I went back to trying to play Odyssey, couldn't do it. So then I was playing Valhalla.
If you could find a way to just kind of get through the story so you could get into New Game Plus, then I think a lot of your issues with the gameplay, with the leveling, would be less.
Yeah.
And that's how I went from 300 hours into Odyssey to 55. Because I didn't have to worry about the levels, and I could do the story straight through and not have an issue. Which, if this is your first playthrough, that's another thing you're going to run into. But that's a topic for another time. So again, if you're new, start with AC1. And if you're looking for a challenge or you want to live a specific time period, then go to the historic sections first. But what do you think is the best order to play Assassin's Creed in? Let me know over at Twitter at visions_AC. I want to thank you for joining me today. Be sure to tune in every Tuesday for new episodes. If you love stories about Assassin's Creed lore, please follow this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcasting platform. And please tell your friends about this podcast. If you have any questions about Assassin's Creed or topics that you would like me to cover, please feel free to hit me up on Twitter and Instagram at visions_AC. Those links you, of course, can find in the show notes below. And before we sign off, is there anywhere that people can find you if they want to ask you questions about Assassin's Creed?
Not right now.
I don't think you're very heavy on social media. That's why I asked.
No, I keep thinking to try and do that, and I don't get anywhere yet. Work comes from work.
Oh, that's fair.
Eventually, maybe I'll have a presence.
And until next time, my assassin friends, make sure to follow the creed. And to those Templars listening, may the Father of Understanding guide you.